Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from Washington, D.C., USA, Tyrome Ty Smith. Ty, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's good to be here. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Uh, Ty is a director of strategic partnership, Common Mission Project, whose mission is to create an international network of entrepreneurs driven to solve the critical challenges of our time. He has also been appointed to a 3-year term to the National Institute of Standards and Technology Manufacturing Extension Partnership Advisory Board. So, Ty, before we get into strategic partnerships or the Common Mission Project, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
Well, I am originally from Pennsylvania. My little claim to fame about Pennsylvania is I was born and raised about 15 miles south of 3 Mile Island. So in 1979, we know they had the big accident. My family never left. I had an uncle who was a physicist who worked for the Department of Energy to assure us that it wouldn't go bad. He actually came and stayed with us. And unless you see me glow, I'm okay. Uh, I came to Washington D.C. in 1993 to go to 1996 to go to graduate school, and I never left. I've done everything in my life from being a police officer when I was 18 years old to working with children who are emotionally disturbed to working with and 20 years in the intelligence community supporting seniors as well as product managers developing things as simple as a scheduling software or performance management software, all the way up to figuring out what the connection was between a national defense strategy and the aims of the agency, all utilizing lean startup principles. On an avocational side, I was recently nominated and awarded a fellowship in something called the A.K. Rice Institute, where we study social systems. And so it's all about leadership. I've been been doing it for 30 years. They say, if you really want to practice something, you understand that you'll never get good at it. You just have to keep on practicing it.
Correct.
As of, I think, Saturday, I'll actually be leading a 9 international leadership development program that will be an ongoing once a month with coaches that we're going to be bringing folks together to help them really think about what it takes to be a leader in the unconscious and conscious dynamics that go along with leadership.
Great.
So it's kind of a little bit about me.
Wonderful. What a journey. Thank you. So now let's talk about the Common Mission Project, Ty. Tell me a little bit about the mission of the Common Mission Project and your role.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this is the last time that we had an interaction. It turns out that I'm not with the Common Mission Project anymore, but I think the mission, that even though I'm not with the organization, the mission is absolutely critical. What the Common Mission Project was set to do was to create mission-focused entrepreneurs. Okay, so what the organization would do was to go to the national enterprise in the United States, be that the Department of Defense, be that diplomacy, like energy, and say, so what are your hard critical problems that you're trying to solve? And we would take those problems and curate those problems. In other words, we would go from they're this big to something that we could hand to a group of students, from doctoral students all the way down to undergraduates. And that's on purpose, because as undergraduates, they only have so much experience, but it actually could times be to their advantage. We would hand those problems to the students and we'd say, now we're going to teach you how to do lean startup, the build, measure, learn, customer discovery, asking critical questions, getting to what the customers are trying to do or the consumers are trying to do versus what they say they want, and run them through a semester's long activity. And at the end, we would go back to those same persons, same organizations, say, here, this is what we found. Now, in terms of partnerships, in my role was to find the right sets of organizations that could help those students solve those problems. It's almost like a Rubik's Cube. You have a Rubik's Cube, it's all mixed up. You're trying to figure out the right set of moves and algorithms to solve the cube. Now, in a semester's time, these students would not be able to solve the problem, but they would be very long around solving them. Some of them did it very successfully. There was several, I think, out of 3 or 4,000 students that have run through this thing in over the last 6 years. There was at least one company that very successfully exited and ended up with a Series D. The last time I saw, they were in their Series D raise at like $92 million. That's not bad for a group of students that were trying to solve a problem. I think what Common Mission Project and the idea of mission focused entrepreneurship is really about is not trying to make sure that you get the right answer, right? It's trying to understand the problem. And so everything that I've done while I was there and since then, because I have an opportunity to work with entrepreneurs and startups, is understand what problem are you solving versus giving somebody a solution.
Amazing. Thank you. And you mentioned that you're no longer with the Common Mission Project, but I do have a few questions. Maybe you
That's
can answer.
fine. Yes, no problem.
What could you give us an example of a strategic partnership that significantly advanced the mission?
Yeah. So there is a gentleman out of MIT. He and his co-author wrote Phil. I can't remember call his name right now, but he talked about strategic ecosystems, and he had a really fascinating concept in this that he said if you put the problem in the middle and you look at the government, or you look at a public-private partner, or venture and private equity, you look at the universities. I included that the students, and you put them together and you figure that what that looks like. Now you can really engage the community. One really, I thought, was a really successful partnership that was emerging was with a organization here in the U.S. called the United Negro College Fund, UNCF. And UNCF is 80-year history of working with historically Black colleges and universities and funding them to make sure the students have scholarships. Well, their mission was starting to shift. It wasn't just scholarships. It's like, so how do we create environments of learning that are beyond just handing out money so we can extend it? And one of their vice presidents started an initiative that he was taking students out to Silicon Valley and giving them an opportunity to understand what happens at the likes of the Googles and the Facebooks and the Metas and whatnot. And we had just started a partnership with them that was introducing those universities to this whole brand new world of government funding that wasn't just money, but it was going back in and trying to solve problems, getting introductions to what you would probably understand and your listeners understand is non-dilutive capital, right? And to help raise a group of students that could help solve some critical problems. That is a critical one. The other critical one was working with partnership was finding corporate partners to work with, because Common Mission was a nonprofit, right? You had to raise your own money, basically. You had to find the right corporate partnerships. I know that you had said that you had worked with Lockheed Martin. Well, that was one of our critical partners that was helping to fund the program that was the we call it Hacking for Defense. That was, that would give us monies to do educational, as well as, by the way, I think this is important, those students would go through that semester's long program. At the end of it, if they said, hey, we're really interested in this, we think that we might have a business, we would write them a grant and say, go for it, right? We'll help you get your LLC started. We'll help you get the critical basic infrastructure that you need. You have to go out and find the rest of it, but we will start you with that. So those are corporate and an educational environment coming together. Now, there were other things that were out there as part of that, going out and get to the national labs here in the U.S. That was part of the direction I was trying to go with.
So one more question relating to
Yes.
Common Mission Project, then we'll move further. What are some of the emerging trends that you see for future partnerships for the Common Mission Project?
I think that there is an opportunity for a Common Mission to go out and really tap into the corporate partnerships, really raise the corporate partnerships. If they do it with purpose and direction, I think that There's going to be a number of they could actually tap into the corporate side because those those students, when they are solving those critical problems, have access to information that otherwise those corporate partners, it would take a lot of effort to get access to it. So in other words, if you were an organization like, hey, we have the brand called you has this technology and they're trying to offer it to the government, you would have to go through 6 or 8 months of just all over the place and no, go make this call and get on this person's calendar. One of the things that those students do really well is they call up and somebody in the Pentagon or somebody in somebody's organization will say, sure, I'll talk to you guys. You got a half an hour, and a half an hour turns to an hour. And they say, sure, hey, go talk to my partner over there. I think that by accessing those partnerships with intention, I think Common Mission, otherwise known as CMP, will be positioned to really tap into a set of partnerships that could really extend the work a lot.
Amazing. Thank you. That was an amazing conversation on the Common Mission project. And thank you for enlightening me and a whole lot of others on the work that has been going on in that project. Ty, the other segment that I wanted to talk to you was the work that you do to create on-demand market intelligence and actionable insights for public sector innovation, teams, buyers, and investors. So my first question is, can you explain the concept of on-demand market intelligence and its importance for public sector innovation?
Yeah. Thank you. The gentleman that I work with, his name is Raj Sharma. Raj has started a company called Public Spend Forum. And the reason why the reason why he created it is I think that he had enough experience. He had 20 years prior to what he called a mini McKinsey, kind of helping the organization, helping the government think about supply chain. Now, why that's important is March, April of 2020, the world kind of just stopped, right? And there was this big concern about supply for the US. For instance, the Chips and Science Act in the US is all about, well, not all about, the majority of it is about reshoring chips. So the chips that are made overseas are now made in the US, and we have a consistent supply chain. What a supply of chips, right? So the supply chain isn't at risk. What Public Spend Forum was developed to do was to make sure that you could have an instant press of the button. Where is this? What's the status of this product A? And to be able to use some artificial intelligence to go inside the data and use some AI to pull out what is the status now. What we're learning in PSF is that the data is there. It is absolutely there. What we haven't, I think, heretofore been able to crack as not just Public Spend Forum, but in terms of supply, because as we all know, supply chains are extremely complicated.
Correct.
Right. It's almost like a scatter plot of connections. You have one thing here and it has 200 connections that have another 1,000 connections. You're trying to figure out, where is this thing now? And so having what Public Spend Forum has built is a artificial intelligence alert system that at any point of button, press of a button with the appropriate prompts and access to the appropriate data, which are publicly available, you can pull up and create information about where a mouse, the status of a mouse in your system and where it's at. And I think it does a couple of things. One, it gives you information. Two, it allows you to do better planning. And three, it is an economic driver. because now with that information around your supply chain, you're not wasting time. You can actually target your efforts to get things done that you want to get done. So it's absolutely fascinating. And if you ever want to talk to him, I will make sure I connect you with Raj.
Fabulous. And what role does data analytics and AI play in transforming market intelligence into actionable insights?
What we're finding now, for instance, we'll just talk about the U.S. government for a second. There, because the world is changing so fast, right? Just think about the speed to information. In the U.S. and particularly the U.S. Defense industry, for instance, that's where I have all the experience coming into this. In the U.S. defense industry, what it allows those decision makers to do is not just fight better war. That I don't want to talk about the kinetic side of what they do, but if they have it, they can make better decisions. For instance, for veterans that are now out of the system to accelerate. Do I put my monies here or do I put my monies here? And if I can have really good intelligence, I can create action, because otherwise, what are we doing? Guessing. We're filling in the blanks.
Correct.
So you end up with a lag effect around where the data and what artificial intelligence and machine learning, because I think as somebody who works with companies who I'm not a computer scientist, but I have enough of a technology background to understand the difference between some things. That what Raj is building at Public Spend Forum, for instance, has a lot of artificial intelligence associated with it, but it also has this machine learning undergirding that it goes out and looks for patterns. And so if we're able to, in a non-kinetic way in the defense department, and kinetic being warfare, in a non-kinetic way, I can have better information. I can help soldiers get healthcare, right? Wow. I can help in rescue situations, getting supply from point A to point B to provide a humanitarian assistance, right? Because those are also part of what the Defense Department does. And so with that data, and that I don't have to go and chase, and I don't have to depend on a lot of people to look at a lot of databases and then collate all that information, that with a press of a button and a few keystrokes and a few access to databases, what I now can do is make better decisions more quickly with more fidelity.
Great response. Thank you. So time for two more questions for you.
Very good.
What, if any, are some ethical considerations that should be taken into account when gathering and using market intelligence?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. Right? Here you had this character, Gordon Gekko, or the other guy, I can't remember, but that whole idea of insider trading. I have lots of information, and without some understanding of the ethical implications, what do I end up with? I end up injuring others. Ty Smith's own personal proclivity is with the position, do no harm, right? Or Google's don't be evil. I think there's enough opportunity where if we weren't selfish, that now we can do, this is not about being Pollyanny but you can help the vast number of people. You give them greater access to health, greater access to opportunity. There's a whole, in my own head, I have this conversation all the time, and I actually talk about it. We talk about generational wealth. I think in terms of generational impact. What can we do to impact people? And I think that if we substitute impact for wealth, I think that now you can utilize data in a very different way, all these actionable insights, because now you can create impacts Think about the world right now. We're like, hey, so what's going on with climate change? Yeah, but what climate, schmimate, whatever. But that there are impacts to the decisions that we make now. I think the human, in terms of, for instance, like behavioral economics, the human brain, most without those kind of considerations, only have enough bandwidth, intellectual bandwidth, and emotional bandwidth to think 2, 3, 4 steps out. That's not impact. The data will give you trends. It's not a reality, but it'll give you trend about what's happening. Humans can make the impact. The data tells you where it's going, where the trend is.
Correct.
And I think that's important.
Well said. And my last question for you, Ty, can you share a success story where market intelligence significantly impacted a public sector project or initiative?
Let me think. I'm trying to think of a good one that would make sense. I think that the work that we are starting to do with the work that I do with Nist, the National Institute of Standards Technology, the manufacturing extension partnerships, the idea that we're starting to develop. I've been on this board now for going on. This is my second year, and I got through 2026, I think. It's a 3 year, so starting my beginning of my second year. And what we're trying to do is to collect information about where the status of manufacturing is around the country. And by understanding what that looks like, we can now actually target where this intelligence is around what's happening in the US. We can actually target efforts. And so, for instance, the CHIPS and Science Act, $53 billion worth of activity. That is 3/4 of it is about development of the chips. Another 1/4 is about science, or erstwhile the CHIPS and Science Act. It's about $13 billion. And by really understanding on the chip side where the money is, how it's flowing out, who should be getting the capital, and looking at where the opportunities in terms of demography, in terms of supply, coming from either overseas or local suppliers, we're now starting to see the impacts where organizations, companies are now starting to shift how they're creating value for the economy in the United States. It's going to be a long process, right? Because this intelligence is not while we talk about public spend forum, we can give you an instant snapshot of where you're at and where it is, but it's also about projections. And projections are also those where you think the data might be going are also tied to other things outside of your control. And so I think that is going to be one where we're going to start to see the data will start to tell us how to start to spend money, how to spin up workforce development, how to think about innovation. That's where it's going. Well
said. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for speaking to me about the Common Mission Project. I wasn't aware of it. And, I think you gave us some very interesting pointers on the kind of stuff that is happening in this mission. Thank you also for speaking to me about the on-demand market intelligence and all that goes into collecting that intelligence. We spoke a little bit about supply chains. And of course, we spoke about some amazing examples where these kind of initiatives seem to be making a difference. Yes. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called you.